Alright, so first things first, I'll just start up Dreamweaver. So that's that. This manage sites window is popping up for the same reason that it would in the previous version of Dreamweaver. I'd been working on a site where it can now no longer find the root folder because it's been deleted, so I'm just going to hit cancel on that. This window here, although it looks it's in a different color, it is essentially the same as the one that we'd have in our startup screens on the older version of Dreamweaver. It's just, again, it's a different color on the bar. The main thing, I suppose, that we want to get right here is in this version of it, we've less options up here at the top. So I'm picking this standard version. The things that we're going to work on probably the most here are this files panel here and the CSS designer one here. That should really take care of most of our needs. The other thing that kind of jumps out at us is that the properties panel is not down here at the bottom of the page. So I definitely want that. So I'm going to choose window and properties. And then I'm just going to dock it in the bottom of the page by just putting it there. That'll give me something like that. Or bottom of the screen rather than bottom of the page. Once we've that done, everything should be more or less the same as before. So site, new site, going to give this a name. So in this case, the name on this would be lesson 4, because that's the one that I've saved there on the desktop. I'm going to go through to the desktop, into lesson 4, into the start files, going to select that. Advanced settings, images still in the same place, so I can put that in there. No change there. The other guys, this looks the same. Servers the same, a couple of additional kind of options by the looks of things in there, but nothing really that we need to deal with. So we can just hit save. It's saying that this is the same as, because I have a previous lesson that also links to this folder, so it's saying it's both saved in the same place, but that's fine. I can click OK. Create a new page, same as always. So in here, new HTML document, or so I'll do both. That's to create a new page in there. You can also do it by choosing File, New, Blank Page, HTML. It is probably worth noting that the default on this is HTML5. We had been working on this one up here prior to now, but it really won't make any difference which version we pick. Essentially, the languages are, for us, the same. So we can hit Create. There is no page title up along here, which I mentioned before. The page title is now down there. So I think, say if I was doing the World Wildlife Fund website, I'd have WWF, the line, and then this would be my site layout. So I could write that in there. But so yeah, our title is down here. This I think is much the same as it was. The code views in there. The split is both the design. Sorry, I'll go to the design view first. The design view is our kind of drag and drop view. The split view is both our code and our design together. So here's our code, here's our design. You also have that live option, but really we haven't been using that. That was just to test how it would look in the browser. So I'm not too bothered about that. We've tended to work out of this design view, so that's where I'm going to stay for the time being. So the first thing we would do, same as always, we just put it in a div. So insert. They have moved this around a little bit. Insert HTML div. That's probably the easiest place to put it or to find it. It is also worth noting that in HTML5 there are some additional tags. So the header is actually a tag in HTML rather than just the ID of a div, as is navigation and the footer. You can see a couple of other ones in there as well. But essentially, yeah, insert HTML div. We could put this at insertion point. The name on this would be wrapper, so same as always. New CSS rule. We would save this in a new style sheet file. Again, all that stuff is really the same as it was before. In there we could call this site layout or whatever. I haven't saved anything yet, so it's telling me that it's going to save it into that folder, but that's fine, so I can click OK. It's giving me some fonts, and looks like there's a bit more choice in terms of the font, a lot newer fonts, which is overdue. That's quite nice that they've some newer fonts in there. At the moment, I'm not going to put those fonts on the wrapper. I might put them on a body tag later on, so I might just delete that. What were we doing with this? So in our lessons, what we were doing was we'd set the box to 800 pixels wide by we'd and then put it in the middle of the screen. So we'd set the margin right to auto and the margin left to auto. But I think really all of this stuff is much the same as it was before. There's certainly nothing jumping out at me there as being kind of dramatically different. So we click OK on that, and OK again. I'm going to get rid of that bit of text. I want to put in another div. Now you can see it's just there. Insert div, because I've already put one in, but it's also back where it was before. Insert HTML div. So if we put in a second div, we could call this one header. We want to put that after start of tag div ID equals wrapper. So that looks fine. So that's set up the same way. In truth, I think they've actually changed that back since our version. So there was a version of CC where this looked a little bit different, but it looks like it's back to the way it was. So in there, new CSS rule. Again, we want to save it on this site layout.css. I might come back to this when we have a look at the CSS designer over there, because this is something that I want to make sure that everyone understands. But again, yeah, that looks as you would expect. I can click OK. Again, I don't really want this font on it, so I'm going to delete that. We just had a background, I think, on this, so I had the background image. Or did we even have that? No, I don't think we did anything on this, actually. So I don't really even need this rule, so I could just hit OK. Yeah, there's no really need for anything. Click OK and OK. And then we had an image in there, so I delete that bit of text, insert an image. Sorry, I've chosen paragraph there. I'll just undo that. Insert image, and then we picked this guy here. Yeah, so that should be okay. Insert another div. Insert div in there at insertion point. Name on this one might be nav or something similar. New CSS rule. Save in the right place. We can click OK. In this case, we do actually want it as a background image, so I'm going to go in there, select our background image, click OK. I think we'd also change the height on this to 70 pixels or something like that. That was about it, I think, for that div. So we could click OK and OK. Oh, sorry, I want to put this in the right place, so it's after the tag of header. So OK and OK, and that's that. I think it should just really go on in that vein. The one thing that I did want to have a look at is this guy over here at the side, the CSS designer. You'll notice up here, this does look quite different. So as we're adding our CSS, this bit is quite different. The first one here is the source. So the source is, in this case, the external file that we saved. So when we put in a new CSS rule earlier, what it did was it saved it to an external document. So the source here is that external document. So if I just bring this bar down again, you can see there the source is this site layout.css. So it's this file that we've created over here, this kind of separate file. So again, it's much the same as before, but it defines that source up there at the start. Which is a little bit different than what we had seen before. The media would be if we had told it a specific screen size or something like that. So if I'd said that, look, this rule only applies on the bigger screens, and we could do that. I mean, if we click on that, the media is the screen, then we could add additional properties. I'm not too bothered about the orientation, but we could set like the minimum width to 300 pixels and the maximum width to, so if I just add another one of those, the maximum width to 600 pixels or something like that. And then that would mean that this rule, or this entire sheet up here really, would only apply to screens in between those two sizes. But again, that's I mean, it's not that dramatically different than what we had done before. And in this case, we don't even need it, so I'm just going to hit cancel. The next thing that we have is our selector. So at the moment, we've created 2 or 3 different rules. So we've created this wrapper rule, this header rule, and this nav rule. And again, they're all saved on this source file. They're all saved on that site layout.css. Down here, we can see the properties of those rules. So if I just drag that up a little bit, so we can see that on the nav rule, we said it was 70 pixels. And did we do anything else? I think we gave it a background image. You have different kind of options in here to in terms of what you can view. This here show set, that's showing the rules that we have already applied, which is kind of handy. So if I wanted to change it, I could just double click on that and make my changes into this. There's nothing else there particularly kind of jumping out at me. If I want to see all the rules that I could possibly change, I could deselect that, and that'll give me literally everything that I could potentially change in there. Looking at it here, it doesn't look like I can just double click on the rule to modify it, which is, it's actually kind of a nice feature of the previous version. Yeah, I mean, if you did want to change an option, say we didn't want the background image and wanted a background color or something like that instead, we could go into our layout here. I'll leave the size the same. If I just scroll down here, I should eventually see some that relate to backgrounds. There's the background. Let's say I changed the background to a background color and then got rid of this background image. And that would do me, that would make my changes to it. Other than that, I think everything's really the same as it ever was. So I'm just going to go back and set that back to a background image. So in there, click on my folder, select my image, click OK. And yeah, I mean, really for the rest of the lesson, I think everything would be more or less the same. I mean, just insert the div, place it where you want it to go. So in this case, after the tag of nav, I could put in a div called sidebar. Create a new CSS rule for that. That's all the same. Click OK. In there again, I don't really want the fonts. This would be the text color, so I could set that to maybe like a light color or something like that. I need this little icon here to pick my color, so that'll give me my color. That's a little bit different. The icon here picks the color. I know font size if we want to change something like that. Background color if we wanted to change that. So again, that, and that. In there in the box, I think we'd given it in the notes. We'd given this a lesser width. We'd floated it to one of the sides. Maybe put 10 pixels of padding. We'd margin, I think, more or less everywhere except on the left. So I'll just get rid of that. That'll do that for us. That should be okay, and okay. And then we could keep going in that vein. I might just rush through a couple of quick steps just so we can see if the template is the same, but I'm sure it is. So I'm going to put in another div. Alright, so once I've those guys finished, then if I wanted to add in to save it as a template or anything like that, should be the same as before. So we'll try that. File, save as template. That's that. We'd call this site template. So site underscore template. That does that first. This area here, so that whole div, the content div, we'd want that to be a editable region. So we choose insert. Template objects editable region. So in this case, template editable region. That's that. I think we just left it at ed region 3. That looks like everything is the way it ought to be. So save that. Create new pages from the template. File new. So that's a little bit different. So file, new, site templates, lesson 4, create. Then we're back to where we were. Again, we said our title is down here. So say this would be home in there. We'd save this bit of text here. We'd write home. And then when we'd save it, so I did that with shortcut keys, probably should do it up here. File, save as, and in there the home page we said was always called index. So we could hit save. Want to create another page, same thing again. Sorry, so file, new, site templates, lesson 4, our template. We could hit create. Down here, we could do contact us. Right, contact us in here. Save that. So file save. I should Control S. Contact underscore us, and so on. Link in those pages. from the template. If I just go back to my files panel over here, so it's files, into our template folder, into our file, we'd want 2 bits of text in here. So one that says home and another one that says contact us. So I'll just do that. Select our bit of text. There's our link panel, same place as before. We want to link that to, what's that, the index, so that to that. This guy here, there to there, contact us to contact us. So yeah, honestly, I don't think it doesn't look all that dramatically different to me. I mean, it's obviously a bit trickier when you're starting out, but essentially everything is the same as it ever was. It's just, obviously the color of things over here on the side is a little bit different, and you can't see the pages here. We just have this to kind of indicate that it's a HTML page, and this kind of, so the angled brackets indicating that it's HTML, the curly brackets indicating that it's CSS. There's a few other slight things where little buttons look like they're in a slightly different place, but I think all in all it really is much the same program. The only thing that actually does jump out at me as kind of being different is the fact that I can't double click on my rules to modify them to bring up that little pop-up window. That'd be the only thing in my view that would be dramatically different, and to be honest, probably for the worse. You do have all the options that you can change in there. It's just, I think, a little bit less accessible than the previous. I suppose what they're probably thinking is that you'll go in here and that you'll actually know the CSS and actually be able to write out the rule. But I thought the other version of it was a little bit more friendly. What we can do, I've realized, is if I go across here to the CSS bar, so in the properties panel, CSS, if I select the rule, whatever one it is I want to change, and just hit edit rule, it does bring back up that pop-up window. And I think that's probably a handy one to have, because I did find even myself when I was over here, if I'd gotten something wrong, so I mean if I'd forgotten to put the the clear on the footer, or even look at the footer at the moment, I mean the text should probably be in the middle there, so if I wanted to edit that rule, the easiest way to do it is go over here and then choose edit rule, and it brings back up this dialog box. If I'm honest, that does not look like an improvement to me. I think the way they had it was much better, where I can just double click on the rule over here. It makes that was an awful lot easier. I don't know if that's necessarily improvement, but you do have that option of just make sure you don't select the entire div, because then the properties changes. But if you just click into the div, choose edit the rule, then you can actually modify the rule that you want to change. So in this case, if I wanted to put the text in the middle, I could choose text line to center. That would move my text to the middle down there. Anyway, hope that helps. I think other than those, a couple of small things and a couple of buttons in different places, the program really hasn't changed.